bright and shiny in my mind. You got me loving, hating, crazy indecision in my mind. I am dead, and you are pretty daisy.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast, where the focus is on deer hunting, tips, tricks, tactics, and stories from across the Midwest. And now, here is your host, Aaron Blasey.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and this is episode number 10. Today's another good episode. I've got a good buddy on again. His name's Aaron Swan. He has done something in the state of Michigan last year, the 2017 season, that everybody, not even Michigan hunters, but every hunter dreams of. He killed 283 inches in a matter of 50 minutes in one night. In a bow stand in Michigan. He killed two bucks of a lifetime, I'll tell you. And the story is really crazy, you know. And not to mention, we do break down shot placement and sights, what kind of sights, you know, we're using and what sights are out there. So we do talk a little bit about that kind of gear stuff. Not much, just a little bit, just hit on it. And we also talk about what him and I are kind of getting on trail cam right now, as the velvet rut, as I like to say, is kicking off. But this is a good one. You guys, I hope you enjoy this one. I am monotone on here a little bit, but today I'm a little more monotone. I'm still trying to get over a cold, so bear with me. You might hear a couple coughs, so I'm just trying to muscle through it. So with that being said, let's get Aaron on the phone here, and let's get this kicked off. And here we are. We are back with episode 10. Today I have a pretty special guest on, and he's one of my good buddies, been one of my good buddies for a long time. His name is Aaron Swan, and he did something this last deer season that not a lot of people will ever do in their life, and especially not a lot of people in Michigan. Before we get into that, I want Aaron to introduce himself, so without further ado, here is Aaron Swan. Man, how you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
Good. Hey, we've been trying to do this for the longest time now. We recorded this way back in April. This would have been one of the first episodes until we had the truck fire and then lost everything. And now here we are in July and just starting to do it again. So I can't wait to get into this because this is an unbelievable story. And I always like reliving it with you because it's something that I only wish that I could do. So what do you think about letting everybody know about the story?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm glad we could finally do this again.
Yeah, so before we get started, like I do with everybody, just break down yourself a little bit, you know, where you were born and raised, what you do for a living, how old you are, and maybe kind of go into how you grew up hunting, basically, and who got you into it.
Okay. Yeah, well, obviously, we're right close, kind of hunting in the same area, grew up together, Isabella County. I was born in Big Rapids and, 32 years old, and I've been hunting since as long as I can remember. There used to be a limit on it when we could do it, but always going out with my grandpa and my dad and stuff. So grew up doing it, and the first day that could actually get in the woods and do it on our own, Dad set me on a bucket, man. Ever since then, it's been just one of those things, everybody says the same thing. Once you've done it, you're hooked. But that's really the honest story. They stuck me on a bucket out there, and I had a deer come within like 3 yards of me that day, and it was the most intense thing. And ever since then, it's been it.
Do you remember killing your first deer?
Yeah.
What was it? Like, I can't remember that was so long ago. What was that? Well,
my first deer with a bow actually ended up being a young yearling fawn, doe fawn. I used to have an issue with dominant eye. I could never shoot sights, so everything was just instinct, more or less. Compound bow, looking down the arrow, and I'd be the first to admit that I missed a lot of deer, a lot of bucks. I just freeze up and it took me a long time to realize that I have to literally talk myself through every step when a deer comes in. But go figure, the first deer that I shot, the one that I actually hit, I put a smoking shot on him, and it was a yearling. But there's only up from there. So
Yeah, and I don't think you ever forget that first, that first deer with your bow, or even that first deer you ever kill. It's I still remember mine like it was yesterday. I was 12 years old, and it was a doe, and I remember vividly exactly what happened. And honestly, I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. So that's just it's one of those things that always sticks with you, I think.
oh yeah, it embeds in your memory for sure. I mean, I can, like you said, I can't remember what happened yesterday, but little tiny moments of that, you know, 20 years ago, it's amplified in my brain still. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, for everybody out there, to give a little background on Aaron and I, we've been friends for a long time, and kind of grew up together hunting, and we've been through a lot tracking deer together and scouting deer, and when it comes to hunting, him and I have been attached at the hip basically, other than being with our dads, and just deer camp and bouncing ideas off each other and hanging stands and doing work, and it's been a lot of fun, and honestly, you and I've been so darn busy this summer, we haven't even had time to really even get together, and do some stuff, and it's getting to be the time here with the velvet ruts going on right now, trying to get the pictures and everything and get stands hung, but we really haven't had time to hook up. I mean, we've been talking on the phone, but I don't think I've seen your face in a couple months, probably.
Yeah, it's been, well, ever since I went back to my old job, working for the oil and gas, we've been swamped. So, and I know you've been busy, and yeah, just every little time I've had has been kind of waking moments and going into trying to get deer season ready and get the house ready for sale and all that stuff. So yeah, it has been a crazy few months, and like you said, it is literally right around the corner. It's going to be here before we know it.
Yeah. You just switched bows. What was it? Not last year? Last year would have been your second year with it, right?
Yes. Yep.
Tell everybody a little bit about that and the transition you made to get a new bow and what you got, and break down that bow a little bit and tell me what you really like about it too.
Well, as a lot of people don't, but shot through like VP or VIP deals through Bear for, a long time. I think we both started back with the Truth 2 and kind of worked our way up. And I went for years where I was shooting bears, but I was shooting more or less a new one every year. And I just actually, that last bear bow I had blew up on me, and the guy redid it, and it was just one of them things I couldn't get dialed in. Of course, I was having some back issues, which was a struggle for me. I was having a lot of issues with being able to shoot it a lot. And I just didn't feel confident, more or less. And the guy, his dad owned Jay's. He said, more or less, let's go up and get you a bow that fits you, but you need to shoot one of everything on the shelf. And I went in open-minded. Actually, the bows that I thought I was going to walk away with, I didn't. I walked away with an Elite Impulse 31, and it was the first time really just sitting down and shooting bow after bow and comparing them and getting it right down to the nitty-gritty to what felt best for me. And obviously after last year, it's my favorite bow. But aside from that, I've not had any complaints about this, and I actually feel pretty confident even when I don't shoot it a lot, I guess.
Yeah, and I kind of got you into a stab setup where you stabilizer setup with a sidebar and everything, and tell me a little transition with that. Going from a one stabilizer to two stabilizers, how'd that help you?
Actually, it was weird getting used to, just due to the fact of it really makes your bow heavy, and for hunting wise, it's a little bulky, but after having it, I wouldn't have it any other way. It took a while to get it truly adjusted right to where it needed to be. And once I did, I mean, with this bow, I was pulling 72 with my bear, and I dropped this one down. I'm pulling 64, 65 with this. So I dropped the poundage just due to my back issues and went to that stabilizer. And between the two, man, I love it. I mean, it honestly, it just falls right where you need it to. And I would never go back to just a regular single front stabilizer.
Yeah, and I know you've been kicking around possibly changing a sight up because you've been a multi-pin guy, and I've been shooting a single pin adjustable for a while and been having a lot of success. And just as well as I do, I had 2 years there that I was just struggling. I mean, I just could not get a deer down. I was hunting out of a tree saddle also, and that was I just couldn't shoot out of it, but also I was switching a lot of things up and trying to find that combination, and I just could not dial it in, and that was about the time I switched stabilizer setups, and I also switched that sight to a 1-pin adjustable, and I've been just making it simple for myself and taking the guess out of it, I guess. But you were kicking around that idea. Have you done that yet? Have you moved over to a 1-pin adjustable yet, or what's your thoughts on it?
Well, when I had that bear bow, when I was having all my issues, I had that Trophy Ridge 1-pin vertical 1-100 right when they first come out, and I'm still yet to go back to one because I was struggling with everything, with the whole bow, the weight, my back. So when I started shooting it, I felt like I was fighting it constantly up and down. I wasn't shooting where I wanted to. So I actually went back to a Trophy Ridge 7-pin sight, and, everybody looks at me funny because 7 pins, it pretty much covers, there's a lot going on in that sight ring, and a lot of people can't shoot it. I've been pretty fortunate. I guess it works really well for me, but at the same point, I like the fact of that 1 pin, just nothing there. It's an adjustable, and you don't have to, when someone says you don't have time to adjust a 1-pin sight, when you got 7 pins, you got to look down and count your pins to see where you need to be anyways. So, as far as I'm concerned, you have the same amount of time and effort that goes into that. But I am going to start. I got that 1 pin actually that I took from you, and I'm going to put that on there and try shooting it again with this bow that I know I'm confident with, and see if it was actually the 1-pin sight or if it was me and I just truly cannot shoot it. After reading a lot of forums, it's not an unknown thing for people out there, I guess. So I'm definitely going to try it here soon, just because I would like to eliminate all them pins, but if need be, it does work for me too, so I know I can always go back.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, just as well as I do, I was struggling with the same thing, kind of in a way. I mean, I was shooting at least 5 pins. I had at least 5 pins that were horizontal, and then when I remember my shot sequence was so screwed up. When I would pull the bow up and put it on a deer, I felt like I was confident, but it was just going awry. For some reason, I just did not have that instinct. It was 2 seasons that I just could not do it. And I'm like, man, I just got to go back to my roots, get simple with it. My dad always told me I needed to use a 1-pin growing up, and that's all I did. I couldn't even adjust my 1-pin growing up. It was 1 pin at 20 yards, and that was the only shot you had. And for some reason, I just like the vertical pin, just 1 pin, like you said. Take all the business out of it. Like when you look up in that sight window and you see 5 to 7 pins, I mean, it is a lot going on, and it's that is when people ask me what I shoot. Everybody's like, well, how do you have time to adjust? If you got a deer that comes in at such yards and you draw back and then they move, however far, and it's like, well, you got to know your bow. You got to know, it's just like shooting a pin gap, on a horizontal. you just got to know where you can hold and be confident with it. You got to shoot it a lot, and I learned from Chuck Weldon. Chuck's from Missouri, and he shoots only one pin, and I picked his brain a lot, and he really helped me out with that, and ever since I've been, knock on wood, I've killed a lot of deer with it, and I really haven't had any troubles adjusting on the fly.
Yeah, and that, I think at the end of the day, it's what makes you feel most comfortable. I mean, like I said, I've read so many forums on guys having problems with multi-pin horizontal, guys having problems with one pin or multi-pin vertical. I think if at the end of the day, you need concentration when you're putting it on an animal anyways. I think it's just whatever really you feel most comfortable with, but I do like the elimination and getting it down to that one pin, but I know that I like to be pretty precise with where I'm hitting, which a lot of people, if I can hit a 6-inch circle or a pie plate at 20, 30, 40 yards, I'm good. And I guess to me, that's not okay for myself. Is that a kill shot? Heck yeah. But, when we shoot a lot during the summer, and I just like to be precise, and I'd like a site where I can actually dial that in, with them pin gaps. It eliminates you at you got a 20 and a 30, it eliminates you at that 25. You got to shoot enough to know where you need to be. Yeah.
And, you're talking about being precise with it. That's a good point with shot placement. We've both shot a lot of deer in a lot of different places on the body.
Yeah.
I was always to the fact that I wanted to bury that thing in the crease. I mean, right behind the shoulder, like kind of lower third, bury it in the crease and tuck it right up against the shoulder. And then I hit a couple deer in the shoulder, and I found those deer, but it's also like, I feel like you're flirting with disaster right there. So honestly, the last three deer that I killed with my bow, it wasn't so much center mass, but it is it's the bottom third, but I'm coming away from that shoulder a little bit. And ever since I told myself that, I've been leaps and bounds more confident in my shot placement. And it's just like that shoulder, for some reason, in the back of my head is like, it's there, just don't hit it, but keep her close, And it's okay to shoot a deer center mass. I shot my last deer in Missouri 2 years ago at center mass, and the deer ran 14 yards and died right there, And it's just, I don't know, what's your thoughts on shot placement? Where do you like to put it?
Anymore, as far as I'm concerned, these bows and the broadheads is just leaps and bounds compared to what they used to be. Whether it be fixed blade or mechanical, they cut these deer up. At the end of the day, I think that, I guess in the last few years, I felt pretty confident with a quartering away, a quartering on, a straight broadside shot. I'm really not terribly scared to take it, but I know that there is a spot in the shoulders that even with these bows and these broadheads, that you're taking a chance. And I would personally rather take, in my eyes, a hard quartering or a quartering away shot than tucking it right tight. I mean, because you're getting into more of the goodies. But yeah, I'm kind of the same as you. I like that, like 2-3 inches back behind that front shoulder. You got the lungs, you got everything in there with these broadheads. You're gonna hit that. I tend to stay away from that shoulder. I'd rather go in either in front of it or behind it, go in on an angle than try actually shooting these deer in the shoulder like some people try to do.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know, it was just a switch in my head when I moved. I told myself and really made myself disciplined in the fact that I was like, well, you've got to move back a little bit from that shoulder. And once I accepted that, I was like, oh, I've got this. Then it was just muscle memory took over, and it's like, you're all good. I've never been one to really get really worked up until after the shot. It's one of those things that you get kicked in, and it's just, your muscle memory takes over, and it's just like, you've been here before. Let's go and do this. And I tell the story to guys when I'm filming. I've been very fortunate to film a lot of big deer die. A 208-inch mule deer, a 182 whitetail, 186 whitetail, 175 whitetail at in bow range, all with a bow. And same thing. It's like, even though I'm filming, you go in blackout mode. You don't really know what else is going around you unless it, you know what I mean? It's just kind of, I think a lot of hunters get that way, but even in the filming game, when I'm doing my job, it's like you black out. And then when you come to after it's all done, it's like, holy crap, I got to go back and remember what just happened, and it's cool. And I think that's almost living in the moment, and you're so locked into what you're doing, and it's just a really cool feeling.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if you don't get excited some way or another, it's not the sport for you. I mean, I have the same issue. I know, now that I talk myself through it, like I said, every little thing, and I know I do that, but after that shot, I don't even remember it. It's just like, man, did I just do the right thing? Did I do everything I needed to do? Even if I see that shot where it needs to be, it always, you go right back to that. It's crazy. Like you said, it's a blackout mode where you don't even, at least for me, you just don't remember what the heck just happened.
Yeah, and it's, and the only way to practice that, you're on a football team, you practice every day. You're on a baseball team, you practice every day. You can't really practice that moment, but, you can, but you have to go out there and just start killing some does. Start killing deer. And, I've been trying to do this with Alyssa, my wife, and, she hasn't killed a lot of deer with her bow. She's killed a couple bucks, but she's never killed a doe with her bow, and I just wanted to go out there and just, let's kill some deer. Let's get them under your belt. That's the only way you learn and get over that hump and become, lack of a better word, a killer. You know what I mean? I don't mean that viciously. I mean that, like, what I mean by that is you get so locked in that it just, your body takes over, and it's you know what's going to happen. Nothing's going to screw it up. You know what to do, and it's going to work.
Yeah, once you get the practice in, like you said, is another word, I guess, that comes to mind to me, is that it becomes an instinct to you. It falls in there, and it don't matter. It's deer hunting. Sooner or later, you're gonna mess up. I mean, it's part of it with the bow, everything. If you start, in every deer you shoot at, you start at 12 years old and you do it till you're 80 or 90, you kill and make a perfect shot, and you never wound or find or miss a deer, I'll shake your hand, because that's impressive. I mean, it's just, you're gonna screw up sooner or later, but you get that instinct in you, and then it clicks. It's just, okay, yep, this is. And to me, them does, at least for us in Michigan, I get almost more excited on a doe just due to the fact of them does around here are the ones that get old, and they're smart.
Exactly. I love killing a alpha doe that, she walks around just with her head in the air, just trying to pick you off, or she's the one in the background stomping and blowing, and it's like, gosh dang it, and they're kind of, in some aspects, they're kind of hard to kill.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's another thing too. It's like, when is the best time to kill a doe? And it's like, I always tell you too, I always try to kill a doe the first day of the season, the first chance I get. But the thing is, as well as I do, is what I do for a living. I gear my whole season up for that first week of season, so it's, if I don't get that first couple weeks, if I don't get a deer down, it really starts getting difficult for me, because I don't come back home to Michigan until Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's my rut. So that's when I always have to try to kill does late season, and it just gets cold and it can be difficult. So
Oh, absolutely. And it's always a different opinion by somebody on should you kill them early, should you kill them late, should you kill them middle of season. You know, at the end of the day, what is truly the correct way, I don't think anybody will ever know.
right, yeah. Well, let's transition a little bit. Let's come to the present. What's going on right now with you? What do we got? The velvet's on. The bucks are starting to show. What do you got on camera this year?
You know, last year, the tree farm, you know, is the place that I grew up hunting, and it's 140 acres. But that one, you know, it was a weird operation last year. Every deer that we had on trail camera died. So every good deer, I should say. So that was something different. We had a lot of good bucks, and literally every one that we had on camera got killed. So I was surprised to see. I've actually got a couple pretty good ones running around over there. I've been trying not to check cameras too much, but at the same point, I've been trying to hammer the mineral to them right now. They need it. And, my 20-acre farm, kind of the same. Not nothing real crazy. Got some good ones that I think by the end of season, or by the time season gets here, it'll be good. But, you know, right now is my main thing is just trying to get the prep out of the way as soon as possible and getting them the minerals. That's something that I, you know, a firm believer in. We started mixing our own mineral, what was it, a few years ago, and ever since then, it's been, to me personally, I've dramatically seen a change in it, just due to the fact of, you know, who knows, because I think the neighbors are finally start to reach that point where they're letting some go too, so is it that or is it the mineral? But I know by the numbers of pictures that I'm getting right now, when they have everything to eat, that they're taking it in for sure.
Yeah, and that's I mean, we're still a little early. I mean, you can start seeing, I mean, I sent you pictures yesterday of an 8-point that I've got that's like, I mean, his brows are, one's probably 7 inches long, the other one's probably 4 or 5 inches long, and he's already established. Like, he's probably just going to put on some mass,
Yep.
but he's also a 2.5-year-old, but he's a really good 2.5-year-old, I think. I mean, he's not going to get shot this year. Well, by us anyway. I'm not going to shoot him. I want to shoot a 3.5-year-old. He's definitely the one that you want to let go. And, you know, I sent you a picture of Jeffrey there, the deer I had last year, the double split brow buck. He's back this year. He's only got one split, but he's so far, I mean, I don't know what his tine length is because I can only just tell that he's getting some tines right now. But his beams, I mean, he's pretty wide. He wasn't that wide last year, but he was a 2.5-year-old deer. I didn't know if he was a 2.5 or a 1.5-year-old last year because his body, I mean, he almost looked sick. And now he's back this year, and his body this year, right now it tells me he's 3.5, but I'll make a better judgment on him, you know, in the next coming weeks. I'm not going to pull the card again for another month and a half or so, just because I've really backed off on the cameras this year. You know, I only have 2 out, and I'm putting them way away from where I'm hunting just because I just don't want the pressure. You know, I just want to stay out. I want to try it this year, see how it works. So far, it's working really well for my buck sightings and deer sightings and everything, and just kind of letting them do their thing, you know. And I'm really excited about the main farm this year. I can't wait to get in there and see what's going on.
Yeah, and you know, you got a different situation than I got with the pressure. With your main farm, you don't have any pressure. So you just checking cameras is something you definitely got to be careful about. You know, our tree farm, there's a constant pressure back there. Really, there's spots where people don't go this time of year or go a lot, but for the most part, it's a constant pressure. So I'm able to get away with the cameras a little more. Now my 20 acres, that there's not much pressure over there. The only good thing about it is I can get into my cameras very easily without, as far as I'm concerned, without hardly spooking anything, which helps me out there too. And that's, that's been the savior for me. But yeah, like you said, I got a couple good framed bucks. I got one that is a pretty good 8 as far as I'm concerned already, and then another one that's running with him that I think is going to be another good 8 as well. But nothing's starting to curl yet. Your guys' deer just seem to grow faster over there, and it's weird because it's only 30 minutes away, but we talked about it last year. They're earlier than our deer over here, which is beyond me. I guess I'm not sure why, but it is.
I don't get it either. I mean, this is the third year in a row now. I mean, you and I share each other pictures and everything, and my deer, I mean, are probably 2 weeks ahead of your deer.
Yeah.
All of them.
Absolutely.
I mean, I mean, I've got deer curling around right now. I've got, like I said, that 8-point. He's basically established right now. He's what he's going to be unless he puts on more mass. And your deer, I mean, you're probably 2 weeks behind me, which is, I guess I don't understand why, but I mean, it has to be probably the soil, the minerals around me. I really don't know.
Yeah, and that would be my assumption because I specifically remember it last year, you sending me a couple pictures on the main farm, and I'm just like, holy crap, man. My deer, this ain't good because I'm not going to have a shooter buck around judging by your pictures because mine were not close to that. And it's once again this year, I mean, like I said, I got the one real good 8 that's got a real good frame. But aside from that, they're all 2-3 weeks behind, which right now around us, that's a lot of grow time. I mean, you can change a deer a lot in 2 weeks, but
oh yeah,
it's crazy. It's got to be in the mineral and the soil and what they're, just more or less what they're ingesting.
Well, I will say that over at LP Camp, now for everybody listening, LP Camp is my family farm. That's a 215-acre farm that I've been talking about. That farm is really close to where Aaron's hunting. Now, my main farm, that is, I would say, probably 25 minutes away from these farms. Now, the LP Camp farm is all sand. Like, it is very sandy soil. And over, at the main farm of my spot, my 1 acre parcel, it's a lot better soil, and I would have to say that's probably a good portion of why that is.
I'm no expert by any means, and I like to think I know what I'm doing sometimes, but as far as I could guess, that is literally my only guess of why that is. It'd be one thing if it was a state away, but I mean, we're literally talking 25 minutes away. It's not far at all, so it kind of blows my mind, but we've been, like I said, doing this for 3 years, and there's definitely a difference.
Yeah, there is, and the thing is, they all end up, relatively around the same, but it's just for some reason mine are a little faster than yours. I don't get it.
Yep.
But that's got to be what it is. So
yeah.
Well, let's get this story on the road.
Right.
Now Aaron was talking about, for everybody listening, he was talking about a farm. His family farm is a working Christmas tree farm. I'll let him take it from here, but to kind of break it down, he killed 2 bucks last year in one night, 50 minutes apart. One was, 144, and the other one was 139 inches. Is that what it was?
Yep, 139 and some change, and 144 and some change.
Yep. So let's go back to the 2017 season when you first started getting pictures, or we could even go back to the year before. I think you had some history with that. Let's go back to the 2016 season and start talking about each of those deer and what they looked like and how they really caught your eye.
Okay, yeah, I guess the one I had seen quite a bit, and for you already know this, but for anybody that don't, I I named one of them the prior year, and I called him Nomad, and he was a weird deer. I still to this day believe that I had him figured out the year before, and he was living on my place, or I should say my grandpa's farm, and my neighbor's place. And I think he would live more or less bed over there for a few days, and then he'd come back over to us. And that deer ended up, never seen him with a bow, had trail cam pictures of him. And then the neighbors started getting trail cam pictures of him. And November 15th, for anybody that don't know, is obviously Michigan's opening day for rifle season. And my dad was gone for work in Vegas, and my sister was sitting in his blind, which is the area we had been seeing him. And she missed him opening morning about 10:30.
Now, Nomad, was that, I can't remember now, was that the 144 or the 139?
That was the 139.
Okay, and he was he 2.5 that year?
That year he was a 2.5, and he was a 9 point. As this year, as I killed him, as far as I know, I have not sent the teeth out yet, but I'm 95% sure that he was a 3.5-year-old deer this year, and he was a split brow, both sides, just a straight 12 point.
Okay, so your sister missed him opening day of rifle season, opening morning. Then what happened from there?
The next day, the neighbor actually sent me a picture of him and said that he had missed that buck, which literally is 400 yards across the field from where my sister had missed him the night before, and then that deer disappeared. They knew it was a clean miss. My sisters, we knew she had clean missed it. She had misjudged the distance big time, and that deer disappeared. Now, no pictures, nobody's seen him again, and so at that point, with being missed twice and being spooked, how far did he go? Did he stick around? Did someone else kill him that you didn't hear about? You just hope like heck he lived. And then the Big Ten that I ended up getting this year, which was the one that was 144 and change, he was around. I actually laid eyes on him once with a bow. And
what year was that? 2016.
Yep, in 2006.
So he'd have been 3.5. You thought?
Yep. He never presented me with a shot. He come out chasing some does down the power line that we have, and he disappeared. I had some various trail cam pictures of him, but he was just one that could never really figure out where in 2016 and where he was staying or living or any of that. So he was very sporadic. We'd get one of them here and get another one of them a week and a half away. And, it was just, which led me to believe he obviously wasn't living on our place. We've kind of been able to more or less be the guy in the middle. We don't house a lot of deer, and we don't have a lot of food for them, but they do cut across from both neighbors, so it works out, I guess.
So in 2016, you laid eyes on him one time during bow season, right?
Yep.
And then, but he just wasn't on the trail cams much. But he was. What do you think he scored?
I would say he was probably right around that 20 to 25 mark.
120 to 125.
Yeah, he was a good deer. Don't get me wrong. I will tell you this, that I would have shot him that year if he would have presented me with a shot. I'm glad that he didn't at this point. But yeah, he was he definitely took the growth from 3.5 to 4.5 for sure.
Yeah, and in your and I's area, a 3.5-year-old deer, to be able to get a chance at that kind of deer, that's you're doing something pretty good. I'm not saying that's what everybody does, but that's something that I try to strive for, and I think you do. Because that's what we're getting, the 3.5 Pope and Youngs. But what Aaron's about to tell you here, letting him get 1 year older, he jumped about 15 to 20 inches. So it does help. But is that what you're kind of aiming for everybody? You know, are you looking for a 3.5-year-old, or what's your criteria?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I've made my mistakes and I've shot deer that I probably shouldn't have, with that mindset of the neighbor has already told me he's going to shoot that, and passed him up in the morning and then shot him that afternoon. And that was something that actually I did the year prior to these two deer, and it wasn't a bad deer by any means, but it hit me that year that I wasn't going to do that again. If I want to practice what I preach, and that's okay. So I let him go. Maybe the neighbor does kill him, and then I'm mad for a little bit. But at the same point, I look at him on the wall. I won't shoot a deer that I'm not going to put on the wall anymore. I look at him on the wall and just say, one more year, he would have been that 3.5 or 4.5 with 20 more inches. And so from here on out, I'm definitely 3.5. I'd love to try to kill a 4.5 every year. I'd like to go up, but I kind of set a precedence for myself last year that I might be screwed for a little bit, I guess.
So 2016 season, you have these two deer. Now, you don't know if these deer are still alive going into 2017, right?
No idea.
So what are you thinking in the off season? Spring's coming around, turkey season's kicking off. What are you thinking? What's your tactics to try to, obviously you want to get your cameras out and get eyeballs on these deer and see if they're there, but take us through the summer months and when was it that you got the first pictures of each of these deer on camera?
The start of it, I didn't get a lot of turkey hunting in. So that was, my main focus was, I knew that even without those two deer, that we had a good batch of deer coming through that got through in 2016. So, my goal was to get everything done as early as possible and once again, hammer the mineral to these deers. And I started putting cameras out very early. I mean, probably before the bucks even got their horns. I wanted to. It was one of them years where I told myself that I will scout, I will find out, I will put the time in to find out where them deer were. And so I did that, and I had some new things trying to prep the property and such. But I want to say right around the beginning of August was when I got the first two. Actually, I take that back. It would have been about mid-July when I got the first pictures of them deer, and they actually showed up together.
So now, going into that, what area of the farm you're trying to hone in on to try to find these deer? Was, I know, the power line, I kind of know where you wanted to be, but like for everybody else, maybe take just a brief second and break down how the farm lays out, so they can kind of paint a picture for them in their head.
Yep. The farm is, it's a little split up. It's long and skinny, I guess I should say. It's 135 acres on the one side, and then we have a 5-acre landlocked parcel back on the river where I actually do my rifle hunting. But the main part of it is 135 acres. It is, as you said, a working tree farm. So there is people out there more or less year-round planting trees, trimming trees, fertilizing, mowing. There's a lot that really goes into it, and the worst part is that tree farm really becomes a lot of people out there, because you go out, you cut. It's a big family thing. They take 1,500 trees off there a year or more, and that puts a lot of people out there. And we open up right around Thanksgiving, so it's definitely something we've had to learn how to hunt that. But the property, I guess, like I said, there's a lot of obviously Christmas trees, but my parents live on the front, right off the road, and so does my aunt. And more or less the front 40 is the majority of Christmas trees. There's probably a 10-acre swale that was completely logged and brush hogged a few years ago, and it's come back, and it's thick. You literally have to get on your hands and knees almost to walk through it. So that has become a very good bedding up until they really start getting into the Christmas tree season in November. We have an agricultural field down the west side of the property. It's 80 acres, more or less, of beans, and then it turns into hardwoods. And
that's on the neighbors.
Yes,
right?
That's on the neighbors. Yep. And then on the west side of that, they got some more ag fields. And once you get back past our front 40, it turns into about half Christmas trees and half hardwoods, and goes back into a big hemlock, more or less a hemlock swamp. And that, I guess that's kind of the basic way of looking at it is how it is laid out. And, down our west side of our property, we have a power line that runs the whole west side of the property. And, that's been one of our, I guess, more or less with that bean field and ag field being there, it's been one of our best scouting spots. So we tend to find out what's going through there more than any of the other properties.
So, and then the power line, so everybody else knows, is, as summer goes on, it gets to be really tall grass in there. I mean, tall, like taller than us, like 6 foot or higher. And because that plays an integral part in what Aaron's going to tell you as well. So now that the property's broke down, you're in July and you found these bucks. Now, what part of the property did you hone in on? So now everybody knows the property. What were you looking for?
Well, I guess more or less we have right where that hardwood starts back there on the about 40 acres back in, right where the hardwood start is kind of the same area of where my dad's rifle blind is, where I had said my sister missed Nomad the prior year. And we used to have a big fence that ran around the whole property to more or less keep the deer out of the trees, and that's been broke down, and really all it is fence posts now. So I put a camera on one of them posts and pointed it towards the hardwoods and put it over mineral, and that's where they showed up first. So as soon as I got that, I knew that this was the area that I needed to hone in on, because this is where that deer was staying the year before. So this area, it was get some more cameras out here and figure out where he's going 100%. Is he still using that same bedding pattern that he had the year before, or has he changed it up a little bit? So I loaded that place up with cameras within 100 yards for a little while, and kind of was able to key in on which way he was going. And sure enough, he was kind of running the same exact pattern. He was going up into that swale in that front 40, which is just a safe haven for him. And then he was spending some days staying over on the neighbors once again, where the ag fields are.
And the ag fields were beans that year, right?
Yes. Yep. Ag fields, all of them, all the way around us, were all beans that year, except for way back. There was some corn back there, but they didn't seem to be. The 10-point was going back through there a little bit, but Nomad, the 12, was just sticking same pattern. I mean, once a week, once every 2 weeks, we'd get him, and he's traveling the same pattern every day. So I knew that was the area I need to hone in on for him.
So what were you thinking for stand placements then? What was your main objective? You've casted the nets with all the cameras and try to figure out where they're coming and going. So on their summer patterns, and just as well as I do and everybody else, like their summer patterns will change, for a lot of deer. Now, was that a factor for you? Did you think that they were going to change, or were you just like, I'm going to stick at this? I'm going to, I casted my net. I know where he's going, and this is where I want to put my stand. Like, what was your plan of attack going into October 1?
Well, as I knew, their patterns always change around us, and partially part of that is, like we had talked about earlier, there's a lot of pressure with the tree farm. So a buck like that gets kicked out once, he might come back. He gets kicked out twice. Most of the time, he's not going to come back. So trying to move out away from where that pressure is a little bit was my goal. But we have a stand on the power line, which for you know, but for anybody that doesn't, the neighbors comes up. It's like an 80-acre field, and right back towards the back, there's a big brush line that runs through, and more or less it cuts the field from like probably 75 acres into another little 5-acre field. And that 5-acre field is completely concealed. And, you know, this is on the neighbors, but the wood line wraps around, and it comes down wraps down to our power line about 200 yards down. And it faces a big pinch point. And we've had a stand there for 15 years, and it's worked. I mean, every year it's always a spot. So more or less, I knew that was the spot I needed to be. And then it was just trying to put some thought into how I can get them deer close enough to me for a shot compared to having them come right out on the neighbors, because I knew that was what they were doing. So, you know, I tried something new this year with, as you said, that power line is tall grass and cattails. Did some reading, and I did some thought. You know, I know these deer are path of least resistance most of the time, period, especially early season. They get in their route. So I went out there a couple months before season, and I took the Ranger and a lawn roller, and I rolled a path down the power line, just a 4-foot lawn roller. I rolled more or less a path and a half with that all the way down the power line. And then I opened up an area with that roller in front of my stand, probably 30-yard circle-ish. And my goal was to, hopefully they were going to cut onto that power line, and they would just follow that path where they don't have to walk through that tall stuff. They can see what's going on, follow that path right down to the sand where I had some mineral and such, and then they could cut right into that corner of that bean field and just try to draw them into me. And, you know, this was a kind of a process of elimination. Just try it, and be darned if it didn't work.
So you kind of had a laid out plan, and your plan was to hit it hard the first week at least. So how many pictures were you getting of both of these deer? Were they every day? Were they, you know, every other day? Like, did you have any sort of weather pattern on them? You know, was it, you know, when it was sunny, barometric pressure? Was it like when the pressure was high, or was it they just basically pretty sporadic and whenever they'd come in? I mean, did you have any sort of pattern that way?
You know, the 12 was very sporadic again to a point. He was just like the year before. It didn't seem that I could personally pattern as far as weather. I couldn't see it. He was every week or two that I was catching him on these cameras, and it was the same exact pattern. No, I mean, you knew exactly what he was doing. It was a matter of time, and if you could be there at that time. And then the 10, he was a little more camera friendly. You know, he was coming in a lot early, and then he dwindled a little bit, but I was actually able to lay eyes on him a lot with the binos, just scouting early season. And he was actually coming out in the neighbor's field a lot, but I was getting pictures of him down the power line. So I knew it was a matter of time that he gets in that route and he starts following. He's going to do what these other deer are doing sooner or later, I would think. And, you know, the little closer to season we got, the closer he started getting some more pictures of him coming down that path that I had made. And he was one of them deer that you get every couple days. And it was always, I mean, it was more or less the same time within an hour every morning, every night. it's coming to them beans. And it was just, it didn't really seem at that point, didn't seem to matter the wind. It was just, he was going to them beans every night.
Those beans, we had some rain that rolled in that September, and it, the farmer took off, he took the beans off in the front part, right? The 75 acres.
Yeah.
And then he couldn't get into the back part, so you kind of lucked out there. You got basically a big 5-acre bean field that was left for you when season came around, correct?
Yeah, and they took them off like 2 days before season. I was driving home from work and I seen them taking the beans off, and I'm like, man, this just really, really screwed my chances up. So the next day I went back and actually went to pull my cameras the day or two before season, and realized they left that back bean field on. And I'm just like, I just hit the lottery. Like, this is huge for me, because now all these deer not only were flocking to that front field, they're all going to this one in the back. It's shaded. We had a lot of rain, and yeah, they were just too green for them to pick. So, yeah, that was a savior. And this is, more or less on the neighbors, but the neighbors give me permission to shoot out there as long as nobody's hunting. So
the neighbor, you guys got a good relationship with your neighbor, and they don't hunt a lot either. They're kind of more rifle hunters, correct?
Yep.
And they said that you could shoot out into their field as long as no one's back there. And so now we've come to October 1st. Take me through those first couple of days. Were you hunting mornings? Were you hunting nights? What were you seeing? That kind of stuff.
Well, the day before season, I seen the neighbors back there, and they actually, where a lot of these deer come out in the corner of the neighbor's field, they put a tripod stand right where these deer were coming out. So I was kind of at a loss on what was going to actually happen for deer season. So opening day of bow season this year, I went way back down on the power line. The wind wasn't right. It was just one of those, if the neighbor wasn't hunting, and deer were flocking to that field early morning and night, and you couldn't hunt it in the morning, you spook them. So I went way back, and I seen some deer, nothing that really, that I was hoping for. I was getting some pictures of that Big 10 back there too, but he obviously never gave me a sighting of them. So
You're talking farther north down the power line, because you're kind of on the very south end of the power line, correct?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so you were farther north, not in the stand that you were setting up to kill these deer out of, right? You went to a different one.
Yeah, I went more or less almost to the big far north end of our property to just, because I knew I could get in there in the morning. The deer move towards or through there a lot later in the morning. You don't see deer till 9, 10 o'clock. So that was kind of my goal. I didn't want to get in there and fester that whole stand up and potentially screw myself in the end.
So the first night you went to that stand. Now, did you hunt the second night?
The second night I did not hunt. I was not able to get out of work. So, that more or less brought me to the October 3rd. And I've been the second night I went out, and I had actually seen these deer from the road out there in that field. So I told myself that the neighbors were going to be coming in, hunt that field, and I knew that they might mess it up. So I knew I needed to get in there and hunt that backfield. And the wind wasn't perfect. I guess you can look at it however you wanted to, but I knew I had to either get in there and take my chance, or these guys were going to either beat me to the punch, or they were going to miss and mess this deer up. So third, it was, if I remember back correctly, it was almost 80 degrees. It was like 12, 14 mile an hour winds, and it was blowing literally right down that lane that I had made, where most of the deer were coming from. So I take care of my clothes. I try to keep them as scent free as possible. I sprayed down. I did everything I could, carried my coat and all that to the stand, and then finished getting dressed in the stand and tucked in for the night, and was just gonna battle that wind. It was either gonna help me or hurt me one way or the other, I guess.
So what was your thoughts going into this sit? I mean, it's your first sit-in, and usually, a lot of people say the first sit-in's always the best sit. What was that going through your mind? Were you just hoping to lay eyes on these deer to maybe get a little more aggressive and move in? Or were you going in with the fact that, you obviously want to kill, but did you think that you'd even see one of these deer?
I knew there was a dang good chance that I would see the 10. He was more of the one that was showing up a lot. Nomad, he was just one that you didn't know. He was sporadic, so it was going to be maybe you see him now, you might not see him the rest of the year. But I went in with that whole, I'm sitting on a field where I know I'm going to see deer. I'm going to see a decent amount of deer, and my chances of seeing one of the several actually shooters we had last year was very good. But was I going to mess it up by going in there on the wrong wind? Early season around us, when they're in them travel patterns, and like I said, they were going to them beans, they knew it. I was hoping that my scent regiment that I take was going to be enough to, revert them to that field still. And I was going to be able to get it done before the neighbors did, because it gets screwed up back there every year. So, I had to take the chance.
So you got an iffy wind. It's blowing right down the path that you made down the power line. Now, as the night goes on, what were you seeing? Were the deer moving early? Were they moving late? Like, was there, what was the deer doing?
It wasn't getting dark at that point till, real dark till, 8:30, between 8 and 8:30. And I got my stand at about, I was getting out early at work, so I was getting in that stand by 3:30. So I was sitting there a long time. But that first day, as soon as I got in the stand, I had some does and fawns come out and eat and the beans. And I would say, if I remember back, probably around 6 o'clock, I looked over my left shoulder and I had a buck come out that was on my hit list at the point. He had a big, if you remember right, he had a nice 4 on one side, and then he had a tall, probably 12-inch, more or less, beam that went up, but all it did was fork. He was up. And he was one of them ones that I like them cool deer like that. We don't get a lot of them, so I told myself when I seen him I was going to shoot him, and he come out about 70 yards behind me, and he walked right down the edge of the bean field on the power line. And mind you, that edge is about, when it comes in front of me, is about 25 yards. And he walked right down in front of me, and I noticed myself with my phone filming him. And I'm just like, the deer that I've seen around here, I'm going to pass him. I'm going to let him go. And I watched him, and I kind of kicked myself in the butt a few times. I had several opportunities at him, and all of a sudden the field started filling up with deer, filling up. And I had a couple good bucks in there that were on the backside of that bean field, which is about 200 yards away. And right before dark, I looked over, and right underneath that tripod that the neighbors put out, literally 5 yards, I see a deer come out, and I got the binos on him, and it's that big 10. He come out right underneath it. And, he come out, like I said, right at dark. And no more than I lay eyes on him, I knew what deer it was. And it got dark, like right now. So I guess I was, make a long story short, I was stuck in the sand, or I stayed out there for probably an hour or better, just waiting, hoping that he could get out of that field, and I could sneak in there without boogering him up.
So the third, on October 3rd, you see the 10. He comes out, gets dark. You get out of the stand, you don't blow the field, so you're going into the 4th.
Yep.
Now the 4th, you hunted on the 4th.
Yes.
Going into that sit that night, because that was a weeknight still, right?
Yeah.
It was a Thursday or Friday, something like that, if I remember right.
Thursday. Yep.
Thursday. So you knew coming up through the weekend that the neighbor's grandson was going to be out hunting that tripod.
Yes.
So you had to get back in the stand. Now, what was the weather conditions like that night?
It was literally the same as the night before. A bad wind, which, the night before I did have some deer come right down that trail, and it didn't bother them a bit. None of them looked at me. None of them put their noses in the air, at least that I seen. And was there deer in the woods that busted me? I don't know. But, so it was the same wind, and it was actually a little blowing a little harder, and it was a little warmer yet. But I knew I had to get in that stand, especially after seeing that 10, because the way my camera was showing, there'd be a couple nights where I wouldn't get him, and then I'd get him a couple nights. So I knew he was either coming out of that neighbor's corner over there, or he was coming down our power line. So I opted to take my chances again, and got back in that stand about 3:30 on the 4th, and tucked in for the night. This time it was a little later. I didn't see a deer till probably 5:30, 6 o'clock was when the first does and fawns stepped out in that field. And I, sitting there kind of watching them, and I looked down, and I got one little glimpse of a deer probably 200 yards down the power line standing in that trail. I had one little opening, and he disappeared. So I just kind of sit back, went back to glassing the deer in the field, and I happened to look over, caught something out of my eye, and the way the tree branches hang down over that power line, you can't see that deer until they're 35 yards. And I look up, and it's the Big Ten, and he's walking right at me, 35 yards and closing already.
So he's walking down the path that you rolled
Yep.
to mow it down.
Yep.
And the wind is it hitting him right in the face, or is it kind of quartering his nose a little bit?
He came straight north, and say that wind was blowing probably 90% north, but it was blowing just a touch northeast. So when I would say it was more or less hitting him straight in the face. Yeah.
Okay. And now, was he on a mission? I mean, did he know what he was going for, or was he pretty hesitant? When those deer get a little older, and especially around here, they can get kind of hesitant. Like, what was his demeanor like?
No, he was, he had 2 bucks with him. He had a decent little 8 with him, and then he had another, just a little 4-point coming in behind him. And both of them cut in them cattails into the corner of the woods. And he kind of kept walking towards that opening that I had rolled. And right where that opens up, I got a camera, and that's where I've been getting a lot of pictures of him. But he was not, he wasn't on a crazy mission, but he wasn't just nose in the air the whole time. He was more or less just, he knew where he was going, and he was just taking his time to get there. So, my first thing is I personally like to shoot standing up. So I got to get standing up, and he had his head kind of down, and I stood up, and this stand, I honestly do not think it's ever made a noise on me, and it creaked right off the bat. And of course, this deer's head goes right in the air. He takes a couple steps like he's going to go up into the cattails, and, not to say I wouldn't have a shot, but it was not going to be the perfect scenario like this was supposed to pan out. So, needless to say, he steps back and starts coming right towards me again. Didn't seem to be spooked. So at this point, I've more or less, I've got my bow. I'm pulling it off the hanger right now. And by the time I get situated, he is about 20 yards and still closing. And right where that opens up into that area that I had rolled is about 18 yards. And he stopped, and he was licking the mineral that I had put out, and he was quartering pretty hard. With my mineral, I mixed some corn, and So that kind of tends to help, later in the bow season. I'm putting corn out there and gives a guy a little more time to possibly get a shot. And he stopped in there, started licking the mineral, and then got into the corn. And he was quartering pretty hard, but, as I had said before earlier, felt pretty confident. I drew back and I tucked in on him right where I knew I needed to be, and I let her go. I mean, it was gonna happen. I didn't want to mess my chance up with him still being downwind, and I took that quartering on shot and took my chance.
So when you hit him, did you think it was a good shot right then, or what did he do? Mule kick and he was gone, or did you see him go down, or what was your next thought?
Yeah, I knew that the hit was. I mean, honestly, I don't think I could have got a much better shot on it. It went in real far forward, and it went out way back on him. He turned and took like the first step, and I could see the arrow it flew through. The only thing was holding in was the vein, and within 2 steps, that arrow had fallen out. And it was really weird. He actually took about 10 kind of more or less gallops and got into the edge of the woods and just stopped for a second and just started walking. And I'm like, what the heck just happened? Usually they take off on a tear, and he's just walking. And I'm running this through my mind right now. I've seen where I hit him. I knew it was a perfect shot. And he got to 54 yards and he laid down. And I'm like, I'm watching this deer walk away and realizing he's bigger than I even thought. And he laid down right at 54 yards, and I'm just, I'm more or less beside myself. I just put a buck or arrow in the biggest buck in my life. So, out comes the phone. I gotta make some calls, and at this point, I don't even know if I had put my bow down. But I called my dad and told him, and in the midst of talking to him, I look up, and this deer is standing back up. And, I told him I had to go. So I had ranged this deer where he laid down 54 yards. My bow was ready. I was going to put another arrow in this deer, and he falls back over. So I know he's dead. I call my dad, and I look up again, and this deer literally took 3 steps, and he walked out of my life. He disappeared. I couldn't see him no more. And I'm just, I know I put a kill shot on him, but I'm thinking the worst. And told Dad to get stuff around, and then actually I think the next call was to you. So
Yeah, I remember I remember vividly. I was on my way home from work, and you called me and ecstatic, but still kind of optimistic. You were telling me what the whole story was, and I think if I remember right, as we were on the phone, I think Nomad had stepped into the field across the bean field. Is that right?
Yep.
So, so I think your words were, Nomad just steps in the field. I gotta go.
Yeah, it was, it didn't seem like very long. I talked to Dad and I talked to you, and I'm running this all through my mind on what the heck just happened. I know this deer's dead at one point, and then I'm at the same point, like, how could he get up and walk away? And so I told myself I was going to sit there the rest of the night, and that's the hardest thing to do for, at least for me as a hunter. I'm riled up, but I had deer in the field, and actually that buck that I had the night before looked down, and he's walking down that same path right downwind, right underneath me, the 4 on one side and the big split on the other. So I made a commitment. I was going to sit there, and and that's, I think I was talking to you. I had deer in the field at that point. I was kind of, I was so excited. I probably shouldn't have been, but and then Nomad steps out where that 10 had the night before, right next to that tripod, 200 yards out. More or less, it's getting late. It's 7:30, and it's dark. Pretty much dark, too dark to shoot by 8 o'clock. And I think I told you that I might possibly tag out tonight if he gets within 50, I'm going to take this shot. And that was something new I had prepared for this year, is shooting 50, 60, and 70. That was my practice range, and I wanted to feel comfortable because I knew if they come out in them beans that there was a potential time where I was going to get that shot. So he started working towards me, and surprisingly, he was working towards me fast. I had another big buck that was in the field, a big mature 8-point that I think he was, I don't know if he was older or not, but he pushed Nomad towards me a little bit, and he come over and started fighting, just scrapping in the field at about 100 yards with that buck that had just walked under me, the mess up deer. And he pushed him away, and Nomad starts walking right towards me with a doe. I got a doe at about 35 yards. He starts walking right towards her. And I kept ranging him, 65, and I felt like he walked 15 yards, and I'd range him again. He was at 64, and finally he got to that point where he was curling around, and he got about 55, and he started walking broadside down the bean field. And I stood up, I picked my bow up, and I turned my light on my sight because it was starting to get pretty dark. And I remember the last time I ranged him, he was at 48.5, perfectly broadside. He took a couple steps, and he stopped my opening, and I drew back. It was kind of like, this probably won't happen. I wasn't going to take the shot unless it was perfect. And I laid right in, and it was weird. I was perfectly steady, and I'm like, I'm letting her go. And sure enough, I let the arrow go, and it felt like it traveled across that field 100 yards. You don't realize how much them arrows are, even at 50 yards with a nocturnal right at dark. And it hit him, and he tore off through the field. I mean, I looked like a perfect shot to me, and I thought I heard him crash, but I wasn't sure. And I literally don't think I dropped my bow that time before I called you back and was just like, bring your tracking boots, man. We got 2 of them.
I mean, I didn't make it from Midland to home before I got another phone call saying I just killed Nomad as well. I think I saw him go down. And I'm like, you're kidding me, and if anybody knows us, we like to pull each other's legs and give each other a hard time. And I'm like, there's no way you did. And you're like, no, I did. And, honestly, you were just saying, when you pulled back on the second one and it was kind of easy. Well, I feel like it should be easy. Not 50 minutes ago, you shot the biggest deer of your life. So the next one should be just, icing on the cake and just easy, like you've been here before, I would think. So, no, yeah. And, you convinced me that it was true. And I think I came home and changed my clothes and said I'm leaving, and I said I'll meet you at your parents' house, and yeah, that's a night I'll never forget, man.
Oh, that makes 2 of us. That feeling is something that I had never experienced. Out of I've shot a decent amount of deer, but that feeling is something that I've never had experienced before, and I probably will never experience again, honestly.
Yeah. So, back to the tracking here, to let everybody know, we went after the 10 first, and we got on blood right away, and you take it from there.
We went right to where he started walking into the woods, and I mean, it was blood from F shot. It was blood. We got the arrow. It was kind of through them cattails where he took them 10 leaps. It was kind of sparse. Once we got to where he started walking, he actually went into an old cow pasture. There was an old fence there. It started opening up real good, and we got to about where I seen him go down and get back up, and I don't think he made it 3 or 4 yards, and I literally could only see 3 or 4 yards. So he got up and he took a couple more steps, and he was done. He piled up right there. I mean, I don't think he ended up even, I ranged him where he had died at 54 more or less. I don't think he made it 60 yards altogether.
Yeah. Yeah, and for all the bow hunters and hunters out there, when you're with a friend, and whether you killed the deer or they did, when you see the deer dead there, and it's one of your biggest deer ever, like the emotions, your mom and dad were there, and you and I mean, hooting and hollering, tackling each other, everything. But then after you start looking at them, and it's like, wait a second, we got another one we got to go find that could be just as big. We didn't know at that time.
No.
So so we drug him back up there and then take her from there.
Yeah, well, I knew when that Nomad come out, I knew him from the big split on his right side, which is what he had the year before. Now, all the pictures that I had of him, nothing gave me a perfect view of his left beam. So at this point, I'm tracking what I think is an 11 point. And, we got up. It was far enough out there in that bean field that I ended up having to get up in the stand and kind of more or less tell you guys, keep going straight, right? I think one of you or Dad found blood right off the bat. And,
yep.
I mean, he sprayed across that bean field. It was, and sure enough, he went in, I don't think, 5 to 10 yards from where he come out, right next to that tripod stand. And he went in, and as soon as he hit the wood line, he died right where I thought I heard him. But if you remember right, I mean, he buried his horns. It took us a minute to get him out of there. I mean, he buried his horns in that grass and them weeds and stuff. He was done. I mean, 70 yards maybe.
Yeah. I mean, he took his last basically slide into those tall pickers and grass, and that's where it ended. Two deer, roughly 283 inches in 50 minutes in Michigan. Now, that is something, if I was a betting man, which, I've been known to bet a couple times, but I don't think you might ever do that again in Michigan.
I like to think that there's another chance, but I honestly, I'd have to probably agree with you. I knew the 12, I didn't know what the 12 until you actually picked his horns up, and I'm just like, man, I just shot a 10 and a 12. And at this point, I didn't know the scores on them. I knew kind of roughly what I thought they were going to be, but I wasn't, I didn't even care at that point. I shot 2 deer that were over 3.5, and I was jacked. And then you get back, and as a guy like we are, throw a tape on them, you start measuring them, you're just like, wow. I mean, this is never going to happen for me again. So it was definitely surreal until you realize that you're done on October 4th hunting bucks for the rest of the season.
Yeah, you were done. And then I had to listen to you whine all season that you were done and I want to go hunting. And I'm like, dude, you just relax. You had a night that you'll never forget, and a night every hunter in Michigan would love to have,
Yeah.
But I understand. I get it, but I'll tell you, if every year I knew on October 1st or the first week of October I could tag out with 2 bucks like that, I'd be doing it every year.
And I say I won't do it again, but if the time presented me again next year, I'd probably do the same thing. It was pretty surreal, not something that will, like I said, probably ever happen in my life. And shoot, I actually turned into like a little local celebrity in our little hometown here. I go to the gas station, people were like, that's the dude. And it's crazy what, how big a deer hunting is around us. And you don't really, you do it and you don't feel any different besides you're pretty tickled about it. But it doesn't happen when you really deep down think about it. A lot of people don't get to fill both their tags all year, let alone 50 minutes apart on the 4th day of the season.
Yeah. And that's the thing, in our area, it's been a slow transition. I've talked about it on the podcast here with a couple different people. And it's like, we want deer hunting to be fun, which it is so fun. But, it's slowly happening with the QDM co-ops and everything. We've got a co-op that just south of us that's really big, and they kill a lot of big deer. But it's slowly moving our way, and it's going to be interesting to see with the onset of EHD around us. It has not been hit in Isabella County yet, but it's been hitting some counties around us. So the baiting laws, it might not happen this year, but I think next year nobody's going to be able to bait. No minerals. I think all that's going to come to a screeching halt, and I just don't want EHD to be here, and I guess what I'm getting at is the deer hunting's coming around. We are getting bigger deer, even on my farm, close to you. I mean, we're probably 5 miles apart as the crow flies, maybe not even that.
Probably not.
And, yeah, probably not even that. And, we're seeing bigger deer too, and it's getting better. But the thing is, 10 years ago, you might get 1 3.5-year-old around us. Now you're getting 3, 4, 5 3.5-year-olds, and you're only getting maybe 1 4.5-year-old and older. So it's making a slow transition, and it's good to see that, with you shooting those deer and everybody else around it seeing those deer, and it's like, oh, it can happen, and those deer are here. That's really cool too.
Yeah. At the end of the day, just knowing they're there was enough to keep me in a tree, and it was my lucky day. I've put in a lot of time and a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of work into the whole thing. But at the end of the day, just to know that the deer are there is enough to make me want to go hunt. To actually get the opportunity, my luck is usually far from good. But that day made up for it for a while, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it couldn't have happened to a better guy. Well, it could have happened to me. It would have been better, but but I'm glad it happened to you, and I'm glad I got to experience it with you and relive it, tonight with you. And we reminisce about it over some beers and talk about it a lot, and it's just something that's really cool. And to know that, like you said, to know that those deer are out there, it's pretty sweet too. Right where we live here, it's they're out there. It's just being disciplined and finding them and getting them down on the ground. So
yeah, yep. This year I'm looking for a 145 and a 150. So hopefully I can split it up a little bit and not ruin my whole deer season this year.
I hope you get a chance at a 145 and a 150.
We're going to be doing some different things. I got that 20 acres I'm going to be putting a lot of time and effort in towards this year. So that's going to be my little experiment this year. So that'll be, who knows, might have another story to tell about that this year.
Yeah, and that 20, it's pretty unique. And, we're coming up on an hour and a half right now, and it's weeknight, and I know we both got to work tomorrow, but it's pretty late. But we'll get you back on, and I want to talk more about the 20 too, because it's a pretty cool little piece. It's pretty unique. I mean, literally, there's probably only half dozen mature trees on it, and it's all autumn olives and tall grass.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
And there's good deer. It's in a great area over where it's at. So I'd really like to break that down and go through your tactics on what you're doing there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this year will be doing some new things. Yeah, this year slowly but surely. I've had it for 4 years, so we'll talk about it at some point, and we'll see if this year if these new things pan out, I guess.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Thanks for coming on, and it's always good talking deer with you and everything, and just like we normally would on the phone, just this one we're recording. So
yeah, I appreciate you letting me come on, and hopefully if someone didn't learn something, at least they got a decent story out of the whole thing. I mean, me personally, I could sit and listen to guys talk about deer hunting all day long. So
for sure, man, that's why I'm doing it, because I love talking deer hunting, and I love listening to deer stories, because everybody's is different, and it's just cool hearing them. So, and the tactics and all that, everybody's tactics are different, and how they use them and everything. So it's really neat.
Yep.
Well, cool, man. I'm gonna cut you loose here, and like I said, appreciate you coming on, and we'll probably talk to you tomorrow sometime.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
And there it is, another great episode 10 to be exact. Thanks everybody for listening, and I mean, that's just a crazy story. It's something that every hunter wants to experience, and for it to happen here in Michigan, that's pretty unbelievable, and I said it before, I feel very fortunate that I got to experience that with him, the track job, and, on the phone and everything. And Aaron and I have been really good friends for a long time, and him and I talk hunting every day of the year. We're on the phone with each other, and it's just cool to kind of sit back and reminisce on it and really just replay it. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. Again, I'm going to say it again. I say it every time. Please go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating. Also, I think I said it last episode, you can listen to these episodes on the YouTube channel at the Fall Podcast. Go to there, subscribe to that. You can listen to all the episodes. Aaron does have a Facebook and an Instagram page, so if you want to go follow him, he puts some pretty cool stuff up there as he's, doing his land management stuff and hunting throughout the season. So he's a good follow. So again, thanks everybody for listening, and I hope everybody enjoyed it.
I am natural.